And let me just explain a little bit to you of how this all works and what's actually going on here. So what happens, folks, is you're born, you're in a hospital, you come into being, and as you come into being, your soul is downloaded into that little vessel, and there you sit, or there you squawk, or there you wriggle as a newborn infant just come into the world. And when you are born, the doctor, the hospital, the people, the wet nurse, the midwife, whoever happens to be there, wherever you were born, they pick you up and they examine you and they say, yes, this baby is alive. This baby has 2 arms and 2 legs and 10 fingers and 10 toes, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 nose, 1 mouth, 1 head. It's a normal baby. And they write a little document out and they say, yes, this is a normal baby and it was born alive. And that document is called a certificate of live birth. And they file that document into a filing cabinet. It's just a boring little document. It's just a normal, everyday paper document. Nothing fancy. Just a boring little piece of paper saying that this baby was born alive. And that is filed within the hospital, and that's there in the living world. And there you are, a new living member of the human race. But what happens then is a few days later, your parents go and register you with the government. And the government provides you with a new document, and this document is called a birth certificate. And this is a very impressive looking document, folks. This is a document with little fancy letterheads on it and little insignia and nice bits of braiding printed around the edge of the document. It's a very fancy looking document, and it comes with all sorts of fancy titles and all sorts of stuff. And then you get involved in that world, which is the corporate fictional world. And within this world, this isn't just a boring little world where you're just someone who's alive like everybody else. This is a world where you get to wear uniforms, you get to have little insignias, and it comes with plaques and permits and licenses, and you get to have little titles and little fancy documents and little things that make it all so much more fun and so much more appealing. And you get to be able to measure yourself via the parameters that this world provides for you. You can work hard and attain different rungs on the social ladder, and you can get new insignia and new uniforms and little fancy caps and hats and pieces of braid and metal things to hang off you and all sorts of stuff that you can wear, and you can judge yourself by all of these external trappings. And it's a much more attractive world to want to be involved in. But unfortunately, being involved in this world comes with a catch. It comes with hidden costs that people are simply not aware of, hence the word hidden. And the hidden part about it, of course, folks, is that it's a slavery system and that you have just been signed over as a slave. And how does this come about? Well, it comes about because your parents registered you, folks. When they registered you, they locked you into the Attorney Regis Trust. You see, the term registration comes from the term regis, which also relates to regal, regent, regina, authority, the crown. Therefore, they signed you over as chattels to the Crown Corporation. Of course, they did this quite unbeknownst to themselves. They thought they were simply doing the right thing because it is a government requirement that you are registered. It's just that people don't quite understand what the term registered actually means. And what it means, folks, is that it locks you under the authority of the current regent. And essentially, it locks you into a system of slavery. And that's what it is, folks. It's a system of people farming, a system of debt slavery in which each person within the system is required to pay to be alive and must therefore run on the treadmill in order to do so. And what is the purpose of this, folks? Well, the purpose of it is to harvest your energy. That's what it's all about. It's not about money. It's about harvesting your energy, and it is a slavery system. And really, what is slavery, folks? Well, slavery is where you are not allowed to follow your own rules. You're not able to live your life the way you would want to, but you have to follow someone else's rules and live your life the way they want you to. Of course, they may give you certain choices, but you always have to fit within the parameters that are given to you. not parameters that you've created yourself. And that's what this system does, folks, and that's why it is a slavery system. Because what this world does, this corporate world, this fictional world, is it actually locks you within a system of rules which are not of your own making, and which effectively serve to curtail the human experience, your artistic expression of who you are, and mold it within someone else's idea of what you should be. And of course, what you should be is that which is socially acceptable according to the parameters of the social system. But unfortunately, when one steps back and truly looks at the social system within which we function, what becomes apparent is that when all the fancy trappings and pretty caps and pieces of braid and insignia are stripped away, it is simply a system of people farming, a system of human trafficking via the mechanism of debt slavery. And all of this slavery system has been constructed around the fictional person that was created by the government in the form of the birth certificate. Because the fictional person on the birth certificate is not, according to that document, in any way alive. It's not something that has any rights. It's not something that is living flesh. It's simply a corporate entity that must function according to corporate parameters and adhere to corporate rules. And when you claim that identity on the birth certificate as your own, and you claim that you are that name on your birth certificate, then you agree to be part of the corporate system, and you agree to be subject to the jurisdiction of its corporate rules. But those corporate rules and that corporate jurisdiction only applies to the legal person, the dead entity on the birth certificate. It does not apply to someone who is living flesh. Okay, now, so people hear that type of thing and they suddenly think, oh my God, I'm living flesh, I'm free, and they run off half-cocked and they think they can get away with everything and they can go and take on the system, they can be a free man, and the whole world is going to change. Well, no, it doesn't work that way, folks. It's one thing to know this about yourself, but it's another thing to exercise it within the real world. Because you've got to understand the people that you're dealing with out there in the real world, they all think that the corporate fiction is real. And so they are, in many cases, still adhering to the corporate fiction. And so because there are so many people out there who still believe the fiction is real and who willingly adhere to the parameters of the fiction and will continue to do so, it's very good if people, even if they are aware of whom they are, can operate their lives at this particular time with 1 foot in the fiction and 1 foot in reality. Because you can do both, folks. You can operate within the parameters of the fiction and therefore reap the benefits of what the society has to offer, because there are benefits. I mean, you can put a roof over your head by adhering to its rules to a certain degree, so at least you're not sleeping in a storm drain. And you can travel around the world because you've got a passport, so you're adhering to certain rules. So there are benefits that you can gain by keeping 1 foot in the fiction. And I think it's very dangerous for people to be simply throwing their identification away because suddenly they're realizing that they are not their name. Because this is going to create all types of problems for them down the track, simply because the rest of the world is not in a position where they're going to view what you're doing as being rational or sane. They're not even going to accept what you're doing, and they're going to still be asking you for identification. And so there's no good cutting your nose off to spite your face, folks, because I have seen people doing this. I've seen some people taking things to ridiculous extremes. Well, what I consider to be ridiculous extremes anyway, I think that people are behaving somewhat irrationally. And rather than using their newfound knowledge as a tool with which to navigate through the system and wake other people up along the way, they're simply opting to take things to a ridiculous degree.